question is, to what degree has human molestation in Mount Everest impacted the region? This is Edmund Hillary and his partner. He was involved in the first known summit of Mount Everest in 1953. On his team were people from English-speaking countries and also 2 Sherpa people. After the first summit, Everest became a race to get to the top because it naturally fueled the human conditions superiority complex. Edmund Hillary started an organization to help the Sherpa people decades later, so he's a good guy in the history of Everest. This is the adventure consultant team. Rob Hall, who is right here, is the founder of it, and that is the first known, not first known, it is the first attempt at commercializing Everest. They charged $65,000 for a climb up the mountain, including a permit, a guide, et cetera, et cetera. The disaster on the mountain was the deadliest in the mountain's history until 2015. It killed 8 people, but it could have been prevented very easily with more placement of oxygen tanks, more ropes set, and also less crowding on the mountain. This is George Mallory. In 1924, George Mallory was involved in the first 3 attempts to climb the mountain. And he was asked the question, why are you interested in climbing Mount Everest? Why do you want to climb the mountain? And he responded with a very, very, very heavily famous quoted quote. He said, the first 3 words of it were, because it's there. That could be looked at in many different ways, but the way that we choose to look at it is that it is intrusive, nihilistic, and also a little bit existential. This point of view is heavily disrespectful to the Sherpa people, considering they look at Mount Everest as a deity, and it is a very important religious symbol. Mallory's body was found on the mountain decades later.
Again, like Ava said, Mount Everest to the Sherpas is a deity, is referred to as Miolong Sangma, or the goddess of inexhaustible living. The Western tourist manifestation of the mountain has resulted in the inevitable disrespect of the Sherpa religious landmark. This has made many Sherpas mad. The disrespect has caused a series of cultural clashes and harassment of Sherpas by Westerners. Not only the stress of being on the mountain in the high altitude, but also the cultural differences between Sherpas and Westerners has proven to cause a degree of hostility on the mountain. The numbers of Sherpas, if the number of climbers is reduced, then the disrespect of the mountain would also decrease, resulting in less cultural clashes and less harassment of Sherpas by Westerners.
One of the reasons for the clashes on Mount Everest is due to high altitude hypoxia, which is caused by a lack of oxygen in the air at high elevations. Just at the base of Mount Everest, only 53% of the air is oxygen, and at the summit, only a third of the air is oxygen. Sherpas have adopted a resistant response of erythropoietin to high altitude hypoxia, but Westerners have not, which causes them a lack in judgment, muscle and mitochondrial dysfunction, a loss of energy, and body temperature drop. So you can see why they usually aren't in their right mind a lot of the time, causing aggression. And oftentimes it can also cause death, which is why it's reasonable to place restrictions on who is allowed to climb the mountain. That way, more experienced climbers will know how they react to the low oxygen levels and if they can handle them.
This is a more famous picture called Green Boots, which obviously Green Boots. But due to the high altitude hypoxia, people continue to climb the mountain long before they should have turned around, which is a key result as to why many of deaths are right before the peak at Hillary Step, which is a 39-foot wall of rock and ice, which climbers usually wait for hours to climb just the last 39 feet because it's just ropes that only one person can go down, up and down at a time, which while they're waiting, they're not only more vulnerable to high altitude hypoxia, but hypothermia and frostbite as well. So, yeah.
So this is a graph showing the dead bodies on Mount Everest. The red triangles represent climbers' dead bodies and the blue circles represent Sherpas' dead bodies. As Ryan said, and as you can see here, most of the dead bodies are concentrated towards the top of the mountain and in the more recent years. These dead bodies contribute to a lot of the pollution on the mountain, and along with these bodies is the pollution from human waste, which also contaminates the Sherpas' water supply once the ice melts and runs off the mountain. Climbers also make their trek easier by dumping any unneeded or unwanted gear onto the mountain, which pollutes it further. So in In 2011, a cleanup group saving Mount Everest had the goal to restore the mountain's dignity, but this did not work well because of the expenses and dangers of cleaning up the mountain. If restrictions were placed on what you were allowed to bring onto the mountain, such as not easily disposable items or something like biodegradable containers for their food and water, this could prevent a lot of pollution on the mountain.
The Saving Mount Everest project spent 600,000 euros, which is around 630,000 US dollars on their cleanup, as shown in the picture. This is an immensely expensive endeavor, one that we will have to continue to pay should littering on the mountains continue. A $4,000 refundable deposit per expedition was implemented to help reduce littering, plus additional fines if you were caught. This has not made a big enough impact though, as the rule was put in place in 2001, yet the cleanup was needed in 2011. Clearly people must be taught not to litter on the mountain because money is not a big enough motivation. Furthermore, the $4,000 compensation for Sherpa guides is much more than the annual income average, which is $700. The rise of low-cost trips, though, has meant less employment for the Sherpas. Normally, hiking on Everest costs a mountaineer around $65,000. However, new trips have been popping up that cost around only $20,000. While this may seem advantageous as it appears to a larger clientele, it means that less Sherpa guides are employed per group. For example, Shangri-La Nepal Trek hired only 21 Sherpas in 2016 compared to 81 in 2014. Even if a few may benefit greatly from the pay rates, the Sherpa population overall loses out as employment opportunities diminish. If restrictions were placed keeping prices up, more employment could be results. Tourism does not only affect porters. Popular tourist lodges such as these can gross up to $10,000 per year. Through running staffing and bringing supplies for those hotels, there's an increased non-tourism employment and a large market for local agricultural products. However, high prices for the materials means low wages for workers. Unfortunately though, the village economy completely depends on tourism as a source of income. And if they were to lose that, they would have no other means to make money. Restricting the number of climbers by setting a specific number of people to climb at higher prices could help stabilize the boom and bust system, even if they lose out on some clientele. The people who didn't make it could simply book for the next available year.
Okay. With the revenue Sherpas make off Everest, they're able to use it for religious and societal benefits. Many new Buddhist shrines and temples have been built in the past years, and also with the help of the Himalayan Trust, they have created 27 schools since 1961. The first school shown here is Kumjung School, and it started only as a 2-classroom school and now caters for over 350 students in the area. Also, since 1966, 2 hospitals and 13 health clinics have been created. This is the first hospital created in 1966. It only had 15 hospital beds that catered for the entire region, and now many more have been built. This has shown the impact of the Western society on the This has shown the impact of what the Western culture and Western society on Mount Everest and the Sherpa community, and how it actually has benefited the region.
Alright, so one solution could be to just stop climbing Everest altogether. This is kind of an impractical one, but what would happen with this one would be that it would stop culture clashes between the Westerners and the Sherpas. There'd be no more littering on the mountain, so the condition would naturally improve. But however, it would dismantle the Sherpa way of life since they have been using Everest as a source of income for so long now. They would lose tourism, they would be able to no longer make money as guides, and also they would not be able to make the schools and the temples that they have been with the money, the extra money, the surplus.
So 2 other more reliable solutions that we would be is biodegradable products and with that, we could use water, so like water containers, food containers, and biodegradable doggy bags to put more natural things on the mountain, so there's not metal in cans sitting there for years to just pollute. Another solution would be limiting the number of climbers per expert climbing guide, and with that, there would be less stress on the Sherpas and limit cultural clashes altogether.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Sam. In what way did you improve your ability to work with a group as a result of this project?
Well, we learned to communicate the most because people were gone for a couple days at a time maybe, and we had to learn how to communicate and make sure we were all on the same page.
Ava, what is the example of a compelling argument from one of your peers' papers that you decided to exclude from the presentation, and why?
Well, basically, it was just a time crunch thing because we wanted to talk about a possible ladder on the Hillary step. That way, ropes could get crowded. We could have another ladder there, which would make it easier for people to climb up and less deaths probably.
Okay. Sage, what is a way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about your own individual research?
One thing that I didn't really consider in my own research was the cultural impact on the Sherpas, such as I just looked at the economic impact. But you could see that from Sam's information what they were doing with that money. For example, building like the temples and the hospitals and the schools was something that I personally did not research and I found interesting.
Julia, what was the strongest counter argument to the solution your team identified?
The strongest counter argument would be that the climbing of Mount Everest does help the Sherpa economy, and it also benefits the Sherpas in other ways, like it helps their society. But we decided that saying that allowing tourism on the mountain, like completely not allowing it, would do that, so that's why we said the solution.
Ryan, describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that made you think differently about your conclusion.
Like Sage, Sam's cultural clashes on the mountain, I wasn't really aware of all that, which that really did impact how just the ethics of overall the arguments and how it does lead to more deaths with a stressful environment.
Okay, thank you very much.